panelists instead of typing. Okay, so I think it's a good time to begin. So welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us in our inaugural webinar series called Diversity Dialogue. My name's Elaine Spector, and I'm a partner at the law firm Harrity and a co-chair of our Diversity and Inclusion Committee. So at Harrity, our diversity mission is to promote and nurture a respectful, highly engaged, family-friendly, and inclusive culture that values the diversity of our talented team with diverse backgrounds, experiences, perspectives, skills, talents, and capabilities. We take diversity very seriously at Harrity. We've generated a number of diversity programs, including this program, which we hope to help increase the number of diverse patent practitioners, as well as to enhance their quality of practice in patent law. So there's no question, and I think a lot of us know this, that the legal profession is one of the least diverse professions in the United States. The patent bar, because it requires a hard science or engineering background, is even worse. 94% of our profession is white and 80% is male. So we really need to make some change, and making sure that we have a diverse patent bar is also important with respect to diversity and innovation. I don't know if a lot of you are familiar with the work of Dr. Lisa Cook regarding patent racism, but she also indicates that making sure that we have diverse patent attorneys that look like us, that relate to us, will help improve diversity and innovation. So these are very important topics. Our webinar today will hopefully address this issue. It's about strategies for diversifying or moving the needle with respect to diversifying the patent bar. So I'm very pleased to have our two wonderful panelists today, Shruti Costales and Sophia Piliouras. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So I'd like to give a brief bio of each of our panelists, and then we can move on to our discussion questions. If, as Samantha indicated, if anyone has any questions, please put them in the Q&A, and we'll try to reserve some time at the end to get to the questions. So our first panelist is Sophia Tuliores, who is president of MCCA's advisory practice at the Minority Corporate Counsel Association. So if you don't know about this organization or not yet part of this organization, I highly recommend that you join. Sophia partners closely with its members to increase the impact of their organization's D&I strategic plans. And I can say personally that she's helped us launch our Minority Firm Incubator. She's been a speaker at our women's workshop. She's really been a true partner. MCCA has some wonderful programs. I was lucky enough to attend one of the programs at one of their annual meetings in New York City. I was teamed up with two other diverse lawyers, and we pitched to a panel of 6 in-house lawyers, and we were given feedback. It was an amazing program. A little nerve-wracking because you're kind of put in there, and you're given some facts about the client, and you really have to put a pitch together in 45 minutes. But we're lawyers. We had to think on our feet, and we got really wonderful feedback. And it's also relationship building. We're pitching and we're developing relationship with in-house patent counsel. That's also was just amazing program. So I would say look into MCCA as a program to join, organization to join. So I want to tell you a little bit about Sophia. She joined MCCA in 2016 as senior counsel, the director of education and research. Prior to joining MCCA, she was vice president and assistant general counsel at JP Morgan Chase, and she managed the company's relationship with over 300 law firms. She also practiced as a commercial litigator in the earlier part of her career. So she was, outside counsel like a lot of us. Sophia currently serves as trustee on the Foundation for Advancement of Diversity and IP Law Board. And because of this experience, she's well attuned to the issues that affect our field. She's a graduate of the University of Wisconsin with a BA in International Relations. She received her JD from New York Law School, where she served as the United Nations editor for the New York Law School Journal of Human Rights. This is why she's so passionate about this, and received an MS degree in construction management from Columbia University. Just amazing background. Welcome, Sophia.
Thank you.
So our next panelist is Shruti Costales. So Shruti is senior patent counsel at HP with over 18 years of experience. She has been with HP for over 4 years. She's experienced in a variety of areas in the IP area, in IP and complex commercial transactions, litigation matters, patent application preparing, patent application prosecution, and patent counseling. Shruti, are you still drafting patent applications?
I just stopped.
Okay.
Thank the Lord.
Prior to HP, Shruti was in private practice for over a decade. And during the time, Shruti worked for a mid-sized law firm and 2 patent boutiques. And we overlapped a little bit at Bernstone, Swecker, and Mathis, which was an IP boutique based out of Alexandria, Virginia, a very large boutique with over 100 attorneys. But I think the thing that impresses me the most is that Shruti also founded and ran her own patent boutique for over 6 years. She is also a former US patent examiner and in the polymers and fuels technology area. Her technical experience includes undergraduate research on drug delivery systems and working as an engineering intern at Fortune 500 chemical and pharmaceutical companies. We're really interested in drug delivery now. Any vaccine related or no?
No, not vaccine related.
So Shruti earned a BS in chemical engineering from Purdue University and a JD from Franklin Pierce Law Center, which changed its name to University of New Hampshire School of Law. She's currently the chair of IPO's Diversity and Inclusion Committee, where I work closely with Shruti. She is very passionate about diversity. She's a huge advocate for diverse lawyers in our field, and really a thought leader in this space. So I'm very happy to have both of you.
Thank you.
Okay, so before we get into the specific questions with regard to the patent bar, I'd like to ask both of you, when did diversity become important to you?
Sophia, you want to take it first?
Sure. I think where it first really came on my radar is in law school as a female law student, really talking about the gender disparity in the profession and how to navigate. But where I really dove in and started to educate myself is when I was practicing and entered the legal profession in a law firm and realizing how much I did not know. I'm a child of immigrants, English is a second language, and didn't have any white collar professionals in my community or who I could really talk to on how to navigate the system. And so I turned to my female colleagues, started sharing stories, started joining the women's law group to really understand the issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion. First, just for my own personal professional career growth, how am I going to navigate this foreign system? How am I going to be successful and reach my career goals while I'm navigating blindly? So that is where my journey began, and it increased as I joined JP Morgan Chase as in-house counsel, because one of my focuses in hiring outside counsel, thanks to the Dodd-Frank Section 342, is starting to look at our outside counsel and their diversity numbers, reporting on them, and diversity initiatives. So that's really where I did begin to take a very deep dive and became a passionate advocate.
Very good. Shruti?
Yeah, so interestingly, I grew up, I was born and raised in India, grew up in India mostly. And I didn't know that there was such a thing as inequity that existed between men and women or different races when it came to a job, workplace. I had never heard of it. Because the place where I came from, if you had the qualifications and the degrees, you were just as good as anyone else. So it was quite eye-opening for me, actually, when I entered the legal workforce. And I started to realize that, oh, it doesn't matter what my qualifications are or what my, hard work really is doing or accomplishing. It's really all about other things, unsaid things. And it was very jarring. It was very I mean, I didn't even know what was going on, what was happening. I ended up in my own law practice, started my own law practice, frankly, because I just wasn't sure what was going on, what's happening in the legal profession. And in the 6 years that I worked as a solo practitioner, I began to realize that there's so many inequities in the legal profession, which for me as an immigrant was a very difficult thing to understand. How are there inequities in the legal profession, right? It didn't make sense. But, you know, obviously that became very clear that the inequities actually did exist. And so I decided that, you know what, I've faced some issues myself and I want to do something about it. But I realized that as a solo practitioner, my voice really wasn't heard. And so the way that I could really amplify my voice was to actually join, you know, either a firm or, you know, be in-house and, you know, have that amplification of an organization behind me. And, you know, what's sad, but worked out great is that since I've been at HP, I feel like my voice is really heard. It's frustrating that it should take me being in-house to be able to be heard, but you know, it makes a difference, and I'm glad that you know, my voice has some value working in-house.
Well, we appreciate your voice in this area. You've offered a lot of wonderful ideas in our committee work, and just really a wonderful advocate for those participating and even beyond our committee through other organizations. So, Shruti, just to follow up on a question, some of your description, did you feel that issue at your first position? I mean, you did talk about being a patent examiner. Did you feel because it seems like the patent office is a little more diverse than our profession?
Yeah, no, so the patent office was a lovely bubble. I had no experiences of feeling less or being treated as less whatsoever. It really is, you know, the universe of law firms. It's the universe of being, you know, whether you're in a corporation or what have you. It's just part and parcel of this extension that flows into anywhere where you have a bunch of lawyers.
Do you think it's specific to patent law? Or Sophia, you said you felt it trying to navigate in your space, which was not IP.
Absolutely. I've heard this from women and attorneys of color in every industry, in-house and law firms. This is a problem across the board, of feeling, where's the roadmap? Where's the transparency? Why does the goalpost keep changing? Why, to Shruti's point, why is my voice not important in this conversation? That is a very common theme across the board.
So our next question addresses what you think the greatest barrier affecting diversity in the legal profession in general. Is it old mindsets? What is the greatest barrier that we're facing?
I think part of it is old mindsets, but we're seeing a lot of change in the way people view diversity, equity, inclusion, how we're talking about it. Last year broke through some major walls and also addressing the big R word that happens internally, racism, instead of using the more polite terminology of bias. But I think the biggest issue, because next year MCCA is celebrating its 25th anniversary. We've been around a long time and we've been having these discussions the entire time. And the focus is shifting. We see this focus in the dialogue, but it has always been about checking boxes, just checking the box of whatever the client was. Look at the numbers. All right, we need more diverse people. Let's hire them without looking deeper. Right. So we've recruited all these diverse attorneys, many of them because we're a very elite profession and with some elitism from the top law schools in the country. So why is a woman of color from Yale in your law firm not the right material, not part material, but the white male is? They went to the same school. They had the same education, the same professors. So really looking at that, and now instead of finessing data, looking for loopholes, we're very good at semantics, right? In terms of how we present information, talking about transparency, accountability. And so you've recruited and you've not been able to retain. So there's a retention issue, which means there's a culture issue. And then we need to talk about inclusion and then equitable opportunity. So you've brought in diverse attorneys, you brought in female attorneys, but did they have the same access to the network? Did they have the same access to information? That is where I've seen a very big shift in the last 4 or 5 years on what needs to happen, but we're still not there yet. I think those have been the barriers. Checking boxes, focusing on numbers, not looking deeper, and actually holding us accountable to these issues as we hold ourselves accountable in the way we practice law, in the way that we advocate for our clients, in the way that we execute. We've put diversity, equity, inclusion in this little box of this special kind of feel-good scenario and don't apply the same business strategy and solutions. And so I think that's been the problem, but I'm also very hopeful because I do see a shift in the dialogue and in, most importantly, actions.
Shruti, do you see a similar shift?
I do see a shift for sure, but it's very slow. It's painfully slow. It's unnecessarily slow. And I think the biggest reason behind it and the biggest problem I see affecting diversity in the legal profession is that anyone you speak with, whether it's a cisgender white male with great intentions, or you speak with someone like me, I'm a huge proponent and advocate of diversity and inclusion. We all want to see it as it's a them problem. It's not an us. Every single person in the profession, it's all of us together. We are all part of the problem. So we all need to work together to change our behaviors, change our mindsets, change our treatment of other people on a daily basis. It's not, one webinar and done, right? It's not one discussion and done. Every single day, every single interaction with every single person in the legal profession has to move that needle forward. And really, I think fundamentally that's the issue, is that it's not me. I'm great. I'm a huge ally of diversity and inclusion. It's everyone else. And that's just not what it is. It's every single one of us.
And Shruti, to follow up on that, do you see, because you were in-house as well as you had your own law firm and worked for some IP boutiques, do you see a difference in how they view diversity and inclusion and maybe culture?
Yes, there's subtle differences, but at the end of the day, everyone wants to say and believe that it's not my organization, it's not my group, it's not me that's the problem. It's the pipeline that's the problem. It's, she really wanted to start a family, so that's why she left a, problem. It's always, it's not about us and me, it's everything else. And until that stops across the board, nothing's really going to change. And that, I really think that mindset applies across the board, whether you're in-house, whether you're, in an IP boutique, you're in a big law firm, it's the same exact mindset, because it's easier to deal with, right? It's just easier to digest that it's not me, I'm great, but everyone else is the problem.
Well, the first step is to admit we have a problem.
Exactly. Yep.
Little self-awareness, right?
Yeah.
Internal introspection is very, very necessary. And that came out, last summer, where we had all these statements across the board from law firms and corporations, pledges of support, shock and horror at the racism and the violence that we've seen, and calls to commit to the community, contribute to the community. And my thoughts were, well, did you look internally to see what problems you may have there as well? It's not an external problem.
Mhm.
And so I think that is a key indicator of where we are seeing some change in talks and reflection of look in your own house, clean that as well.
Mhm. Absolutely. That
Great
is so
advice.
true, Sophia. Yeah. And I think the other issue I will mention is that with companies, it's a little easier to disseminate the diversity and inclusion message because lots and lots and lots of money is at stake, and you can directly see the negative impact or the benefits based on product sales or whatever it is, right? You can also see on social media if there is any, negative campaigns happening because a company is not supportive of D&I and is being tone deaf or something like that. So I think companies are a lot more careful and, deliberate and really do truly work hard to propagate the D&I message down all the way to everyone. And really the intent is a good intent there. The problem is when you get to really, really big companies, that message doesn't necessarily percolate at every single level, which is understandable. I mean, you cannot expect that to happen perfectly. The problem with law firms, on the other hand, is that there's a lot more of a desire to just achieve what you want to achieve by showing the checking of the boxes without really looking into the issues and the problems and really kind of propagating the same message top down. I don't really see that happening.
A lot.
Also more difficult. There are more cooks in the kitchen at a law firm, right? There are more owners and there are more voices that have decision-making power. And so in-house, look, the GC speaks, it's going to happen. It's going to trickle down. Now, our research has shown that sometimes there is a disconnect once you get to the middle layers. And that's something that we say you must investigate, you must look at the data of where the disconnect's happening. But a law firm, all shareholders, all equity partners have a say. So therefore it gets very, very muddled, or I think combative is not the exact word, but there's more debate.
Yeah. That's definitely true.
Which brings us to our next question that talks a little bit about what you were discussing, Sophia, about checking the boxes. And the Mansfield rule is one of those rules that kind of as you check that box. Do you have 30% of leadership and equity partner positions held by underrepresented groups? So I want to direct this with regard to the patent bar. As I mentioned earlier, the patent bar is 94% white and 80% white males. Is it appropriate to apply the Mansfield rule to the patent bar? And if not, what alternative strategies do you believe would be helpful for moving the needle in the patent bar?
I think with this, there are different circumstances, right, that specifically impact patent law practice. And that needs to be taken into consideration. We have been, preaching about data. So we should look at the data and we should measure our goals accordingly. So I think there should be an examination of what's happening in patent law and the actual numbers, because there is a very real difference, Elaine, as you have pointed out, as we have discussed in our discussions in talking about what can we do to create different solutions, and where patent law is really looking at pipeline issues that are very, very real and that are different than some of the different areas of practice. We've always, pipeline is what we talk about ad nauseum in our profession, but with the patent bar, there is a specific issue. With the numbers at the Mansfield, that's more for GP. I think specialty boutiques, there are different, and so that should be taken into consideration as we think of thoughtful solutions.
Shruti, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, listen, every step is helpful. Okay, so, application of Mansfield rule for the patent bar diversification, well, why not? Sure, but it's not the one thing that will fix everything, right? It's not going to happen. So I say I'm a huge believer of there's no need to reinvent the wheel. I just say copy what Harrity is doing.
said the same. It's not one size fits all.
Right,
It's
right.
a multifaceted solution. And so go look at Harrity and Harrity because they've been really doing it, especially the last 4 or 5 years.
Exactly, you know, and I think the number one thing I can suggest, you know, besides the application of the Mansfield rule is the offering of flexible working and remote work. I think that really is the absolute ultimate key. And there's other issues, you know, you want to provide clear, actionable feedback, you want to provide sponsorship opportunities, you want to make sure that advancement opportunities are clear and transparent. All of those, you know, things follow, right? But at the end of the day, I really think one of the biggest rate limiting steps for most firms is that they do not allow or encourage or frown upon flexible working and remote working. And that really kills it for most people that have, you know, family obligations and, you know, they have young kids or they have older parents or, you know, they have, you know, anything else really going on in their life without, you know, just having everything being perfect and narrow. And that's not real.
And Shruti, to that point, I know that there have been women practitioners that I've known along my career that because they wanted to make partner, continued along that pathway of billable hours, full-time, et cetera, and then faced mental health issues because they couldn't possibly juggle it all. And so for me, when I left an in-house position, which most people would never think of doing, leaving in-house and going back to private practice, it was because Harrity said, number one, you can work remotely. This is before the pandemic. And you can have a flexible work schedule and you can make partner.
The key.
Which is key. How can we advance in our career? You know, there are things I bring to the table. It doesn't matter that I'm working reduced hours. I'm still bringing them to the table. I just have a family and other obligations I need to tend to. And I like to have a balance in my, obviously I don't want to have mental health issues in trying to juggle it all. So that's, I think, a really important point, flexibility that firms can offer their employees. Because if you create a culture of inclusion and create a culture of caring, people are going to do their best. They're going to be superstars. And I think Harrity is a perfect example of that, how the people that are within our firm are really living their best life. I hate to sound like Oprah, but like living.
Well, it's the human condition is if you want me to invest in you, I would like you to invest in me.
Of course.
And I think it has to be seen as that, is this dedication to our career, this dedication to our firm, our legal department. If you're demanding of that, then I need to know that you're invested in my success as well and that you're hearing me. I think we're starting to see that, but pre-pandemic, that was not the case.
And pandemic, I look at the pandemic as a really great thing for a lot of practitioners because their firms did not give them an option before. Their companies did not give them an option before to working from home. And now they can see, hey, guess what? They don't need to be babysat while they do their work. They can actually get their work done.
Productivity has not been impacted for many.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know most people would not say that the pandemic is a blessing, but I think you definitely have some wonderful things that came out of it. A lot for the legal profession and probably for other professions where people are able to now do their work from home and have more of that flexibility. So I would be excited to see more of that because I think that really is going to affect our numbers with regard to diversity and inclusion.
So Elaine, I want to just throw a question to you guys that just came in through the chat from Susie because it's pertinent to this conversation. Do you think that if the majority of flexible and remote working attorneys are women, but the men are working in an office, the remote working women will be passed over for the new exciting work and promotions because of a lack of visibility?
It's entirely possible. It has happened before. It will continue to happen going forward. 2 bits of advice from me, leave that firm and make sure that your voice is heard and you letting management know that you see what's happening. One of the things that really helps to keep the system the way it is, which is inequitable and broken, is that people just don't speak up. So please speak up and say that you see what's going on and you don't want to be treated inequitably just because you're working from home. And you know, you can have that conversation very nicely and politely and professionally.
Also acceptable now to have that conversation.
Mhm.
It was not. If you were to be the squeaky wheel to raise an objection, you were seen as not a team player. You were seen as someone who was the victim, putting that in quotes. And so we've opened up a lot of conversations. Take a look at that. I am curious, Elaine, to see what will happen as things do start to open up. Because there has been, again, flexibility and acceptance and actual conversations amongst leaders of what this will look like. To your point, what does access, visibility, how are we going to create that or maintain that as we switch to a hybrid working environment?
Well, that's very interesting because we are mostly remote. I mean, we were probably about 50% remote before COVID hit. And now obviously all of us are 100% remote, and we're thinking about staying in that format of being remote. And part of what's helped us at Harrity is to have check-ins. So like you were, you know, it's like the water cooler check-in. How are you doing? And we try to promote these conversations between our leadership team and all of our employees. And that's a way to feel connected, but also kind of give that relationship building, which is important to advance you in your career with regard to partnerships. So I would recommend to Susie that they would incorporate practices that leadership reaches out to really you can really do it to all your employees. That's what we do. We make sure that everybody is connected to leadership, and we change it up. We want everyone to know each other and develop relationships. So, you know, it's a work in progress. Obviously, it's not the same as seeing someone in person, but that's the way we're continuing at Harrity. We're not going to be seeing anyone in person except for maybe once a year at our state of the firm. So as we minimize our office space, we can embrace some of these. I know we don't always love these Zoom conversations, but if you used to do audio calls and you do Zoom now, you know how much better that is as far as being able to see people. So that would be my recommendation. So I want to move on to our next question. As I had mentioned before, and everyone on this call probably knows that patent attorneys need a degree in a hard science. There was a recent article about how the approved degrees inhibit women from joining the profession. They were talking about expanding the classes of degrees to encompass more women. Do you think that's a solution, or what else can we do to help bolster the number of underrepresented groups obtaining such degrees?
Want me to take that?
Yes, sure.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that the expansion of the classes of degrees would be helpful. Why wouldn't it be helpful? It would expand the options, and it wouldn't just expand options for minorities or for women. It would expand options really for everyone. So that would be great. But I don't really think that this is the only problem or solution really affecting the diversity of the patent bar. As far as I'm concerned, another significant issue is that many technically qualified women and minorities do not know about a career as a patent agent. I knew nothing of this universe. My dad, who's a PhD chemical engineer, had never heard of this whole universe ever in any way, shape, or form. I happened to stumble upon this career by attending this completely random seminar that they offered at Purdue University, which is where I got my undergrad. And it was completely, happenstance that I happened to attend that seminar. And this guy who was a patent lawyer was talking about a career as a patent lawyer or as a patent agent. And it was news to me. I had no idea, what this whole universe was. And, of course, after that, I did my research, seemed really interesting. And that's how I landed in this space. I knew no one. I had no contacts. I had no connections. So, the path that I forged for myself is entirely on my own. And I really think that the PTO really can and should do a better job of advertising, the different careers that you can have once you have a technical degree. You can become a patent examiner, you can become a patent agent, you can become a patent lawyer. So the PTO could do a better job of bringing in as many, different people as possible. So for me, it's getting the word out, really.
Yeah, access to information.
Mm-hmm.
It's complicated enough in terms of, having a hard science undergraduate degree, but then also the requirements in order to fulfill what they need and then go to law school. You need to go earlier on in careers, provide this information. There's just really not enough going on. And so by the time someone's like, I might be interested in the career, they might not have the credentials. They might have not gotten the appropriate degree that will allow them to do that. I've heard that time and time again of what Shruti said. I just didn't know. And I didn't even know what I didn't know. And so communication has to be better, and an antiquated system that has not been changed in how many years needs to be changed. Especially, it's like patents, technology has changed quite significantly in 20 years. So the federal regulator and one of the key resources here should be able to move with the times.
Absolutely. And if you read the paper, it was written actually by a patent agent. It was a wonderful article. And what struck me about these category A approved degrees was, for example, computer science from Carnegie Mellon, you would not, if you're not accredited by this institution, you couldn't qualify under category A. So some of the rules are archaic, and it's nice that before Iancu left, he decided that they're going to investigate this and try to expand out. But you're right, there's so many other factors. That's just one tiny little thing that could help, but obviously it's not going to affect the overall issue we have with regard to diversity of the patent bar. And Shruti, to your point about not knowing about patent law as a career, my family, engineers as well. My dad had a master's in mechanical engineering. He worked for IBM for 25 years. He didn't know what it was. And I actually learned about it from a family friend who was an engineer at Westinghouse. And he asked me in high school what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I said, well, I'm good at math and my dad's a mechanical engineer, but I really love the law. Like, I love to argue. I love justice. This is just totally for me. He says, you should get into patent law. So I was lucky enough to have the seed planted, but a lot of these engineers don't know, and it's important that they do know about it so we can expand. And in other organizations, Shruti, like IPO or AIPLA, are also trying to do their part to get the word out. I know our outreach committee for the D&I committee of IPO is really trying to get the word out to diverse engineers and also law firms. I know that we have started doing it. I know other law firms are modeling some of this, trying to do that outreach to engineers to try to be aware. But I think the patent office could have a huge impact. I think that's a great suggestion. And hopefully that's something they can implement in the next couple of years. Mm-hmm. So my next question is, I keep harping on this, but 80% of the registered patent attorneys are white males. And Shruti, as you went into these IP law boutiques, you know that there are a lot of white men. And the smaller the boutique, sometimes, and I know before I started with Harrity, you might have a small group of all white male attorneys. Harrity has a pretty stringent writing requirement. What would you say to these small firms with regard to moving the needle with respect to diversity in their firms? Like, what would be your number one recommendation?
I think the easiest answer is that you have no excuse as a small firm because you have much fewer cooks in the kitchen. So you can really make changes and pivot your firm in terms of hiring practices, inclusion practices, that a firm that has 1,000 lawyers, 2,000 lawyers just can't do that easily, They have to have meeting upon meeting upon meeting to discuss another meeting to make any changes, right? But with smaller law firms, really, there's just no excuse. And I always say, begin with offering remote work and flexible work schedules. Start there and you cannot possibly go wrong. And I saw in the chat, some people are, mentioning that, it is interesting, what about FaceTime and what about that sort of need for control that partners have maybe over, more junior associates. I mean, that's exactly what it is, it's a need for control. And that FaceTime is not the thing that is going to make or break your career one way or the other. You can still have FaceTime via Zoom. There's no difference as far as I'm concerned. It's no longer 1895. There's no need to meet in person to get that face-to-face, time. You can have just as great conversations via Zoom and, have a great career, get great mentoring, get great advice, and, do all of those things that people have done, for the last hundreds of years, really. So there's no excuse, and people are trying to, tell you that, well, remote work is really going to affect your in-person relationship. To me, those are just excuses. That's all it is. I don't believe it.
Sophia, do you have a thought on that?
Well, look, we've been figuring it out. We've been able to have face-to-face interactions and connections over this last year, and you can touch base. You can have FaceTime. I've heard from many firms, especially, that they have made a concerted effort to make sure to check in with people. Practice group leaders checking in with their team, scheduling one-on-ones to see where someone is. Formalize that structure for these new, or the next normal, as they say, that it's not going away. So in doing that and communicating that to the firm attorneys that are working remotely or part-time remote work, of this is how we are going to connect. This is how you're going to have visibility. This is how we're going to have access, and being thoughtful about that access, right? So maybe you are having a practice group meeting and some people are dialing in, making sure you have that technology. People can be on the screen. It's all there. We've been working it. And so don't just abandon it because, like, okay, this is over. Let's go back to the way things were. We're not going back there, especially with the younger generation of attorneys who are very, very savvy with technology, very comfortable with it, have been comfortable even pre-pandemic. They'll make it work. They have made it work, and we have to kind of adapt to that.
It's a great point. We talked a little bit about the pandemic, and we talked about some of the benefits of the pandemic. Do you see any downside of how it's maybe affected the diversity issue? Any drawbacks to the pandemic?
I think one of the drawbacks, and we just were talking about, is about that visibility and that connectivity, especially with attorneys of color and women. They're getting a little lost in the shuffle. If you're not comfortable enough, Shruti, as you said, to speak, if you feel you're frustrated, and even if I do speak, I'm not being heard, that didn't change overnight. And so we have been seeing that, we've been hearing that, having the connections to understand where opportunity lies. I've heard from several attorneys of color within firms, business development, being part of pitch teams, being invited to pitches, but not actually working on the work. That still is happening, and that the pandemic has made that a little messier. Also, on top of the pandemic, the complete global unrest and this supposed awakening to racial inequality, which I said, I'm glad we finally woke up. It's been around for a while. We've been talking about it. But in that aspect of it as well, you see conversations are open, but they're not remaining open. So, and attorneys of color specifically, I've heard anecdotally through all our membership, is sometimes I don't want to be on the screen. Sometimes I don't want to share my whole life. I have not felt comfortable. There is judgment and bias there, and I don't feel safe enough yet to let you into that world. So we need to keep discussing that and allowing open dialogue without repercussions and retaliation.
Shruti, do you have anything to add to that?
The only thing I can add to Sophia's really great answer is, for me, I feel less burdened. I feel like I can actually breathe and relax, and I don't have to have a certain image or a certain facade going in every day. If I'm feeling really just, not okay for whatever reason, right? It could be nothing to do with work and there's family issues. I can just feel that, and I can, wallow in that and have my moment and not have to explain to people, right? Are you okay? What's wrong? And of course that comes from a well-meaning place, but sometimes you just, want to be sort of left alone.
The pressure of maintaining the game face, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And so I think in that regard, it's been really nice, but Sophia's points are great. There's a lot of negatives as well.
So what can we do as we're extending through the pandemic to make sure that the underrepresented groups are, I mean, it's such a delicate topic with regard to the racism and how to engage our underrepresented groups, but not like you said, Sophia, like maybe they don't want to be in the spotlight or I heard at a recent conference about not just having inclusion policies to celebrate our culture, but maybe helping a cause for our members. Like what cause can we help also to support them, to really support them where they are, whatever it may be. Do you have any feelings on that, Sophia? Because I know that inclusion policies are great. So as we brainstorm a lot about what can we do to make sure that our employees feel included. And so we have ways to share about our cultures, there's ways to support each other, but we feel like sometimes that's not enough. Like what else can we do to make sure that our underrepresented groups, and it's easier to do at Harrity, we're so small, but right. What else can we do to make sure that our underrepresented groups, number one, feel like they have a voice and feel safe? I mean, that's very important. But is there any other action we can do to make sure that that happens?
Well, look, education and open dialogue are very important. Sharing differences and educating people about those differences is great. But do not put the onus and the ownership on that person of color. They are dealing with a lot. They also have their own career to deal with, and they don't need to be the teacher to all on how to be treated with respect. The firm's in-house legal departments as well need to take ownership in terms of not only the inclusion aspect, right? Creating the appropriate work culture of transparency and openness, but also the equity aspect. It is not their duty to make sure that you have a process in place and they know on how to succeed, what it takes to be promoted. That is your responsibility. That must be communicated clearly. You must take ownership and say, Shruti, this is the path to success. Here are the milestones that must be reached. And we will check in periodically, be it quarterly, to see where you are and also if you have questions. Too many times that onus is put on the attorney on top of everything else they're dealing with. And that must stop. I heard so many times, I've read so many articles about that added burden of, I must be the perfect employee. I must be the perfect attorney. And now I must be the perfect educator and advocate on how it is to be an anti-racist and let everyone and assure everyone that they're good people, they're not bad people, and that I like them. And that's ridiculous. And that is where that change needs to occur. And ownership needs to be taken by these companies, by these law firms, small or large, right? Elaine, where you are having an active dialogue, leadership is talking about that and proposing the solutions and not putting that weight on the employees to be like, well, if it's broke, then what should we do to fix it? No, that has to stop.
Are you seeing that law firms and corporations are actually doing that, or actually taking ownership?
I have seen that in some aspects, but I've also seen where, talk is still talk. That actions, general statements are still being made, general pledges are still being made, but what needs to be followed up is we pledge to do A, B, and C, and this is how we're going to do it. This is what success looks like and how we're going to see if we succeed. And these are the people that are going to be accountable for it. and communicating that throughout the department, and not only key people knowing what that information is. I have seen that happen in law firms and in some companies as of late, but I've also heard the opposite, right? Going in and let's center our Black employees. Let's have some action groups. Let's have some round tables. And then you bring HR to that round table. Do you think an attorney is going to speak freely about what they feel or what they see needs to change? I mean, that never happened. Shruti and I have spoken about it. We spoke about when we were discussing this is those company surveys. In my entire career, I don't know anyone that is, even when they're anonymous, who has been completely honest on what they truly feel.
So true. I will make this shameless, absolutely shameless plug for HP here. My apologies in advance that I really believe deep in my heart and every cell of my body that our board of directors, our CEO, Enrique Lors, and our general counsel or chief legal officer right now, Harvey Anderson, they really, truly are committed to doing the right thing. And they are absolutely walking the talk. It's not just talk. And there's plans that have actually been put in place supporting Black businesses. A certain amount of funding has to go to Black businesses, Black-owned businesses, hiring from HBCUs. I mean, there's real action that's happening. Is it enough? Probably not, right? I mean, when is it really enough? We can always do more, but things are really actually happening. And what that tells me is that they really care. And so that makes me feel included and that makes me feel valued, even though I don't identify as a Black IP, professional or Black person, but it makes me think that they're valuing all different backgrounds and races. So it's a great feeling. But there's still a lot of work to be done, and it never stops. And I do think that that's another great sort of litmus test, is to look at your leadership all the way from the top. Are they always reiterating and saying we're doing a lot, but we still need to do more? Yeah. That's what you want to hear. Mm-hmm. And I do hear that. And so that's really reassuring.
There are companies exactly like HP that are doing it right. And why they're doing that is they've also posted it. They're being transparent about their data. If you go to the diversity and inclusion web pages, it's no longer broad mission statements and little badges of awards. It's saying, this is our data. This is where we have succeeded. This is where we have not succeeded. And this is what we're doing to address it, and providing at a minimum, an annual update of where they are and where their goals continue. That's exactly right, Shruti. It's happening. That's why there is some hope of that there can be, that we're rounding a bend to some real change.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I wanted to hop on a question in the Q&A, and it talks specifically about changing the numbers with regard to the patent bar. And in the question, they talk about, besides a general cultural change, I believe that the diversity issue within IP is a basic numbers problem. And he talks about, while in undergrad, I witnessed a large percentage of women and students of color simply changing their majors due to a lack of interest. He thinks that a large part of changing the trend of low inclusion of minorities in IP is educating students about the collegiate level at the various IP law opportunities. We talked about that. But another interesting thing I want to bring up, is it a lack of interest, or is it facing issues with regard to professors? I know, being a mechanical engineering professors, there were certain professors that wouldn't even look at me. I was not in the room. When we were in a group team project, they wouldn't even look at me. Shruti, you're nodding.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I was specifically told by one of the professors that, you're not really going to be successful, right? And I'm thinking, well, I clearly don't believe that and agree with that, but I guess time will tell. And I guess I'm the one laughing now.
I also had something similar from a patent professor that said, oh, mechanical engineering is too general. You can't get a job there, et cetera. You know, and I think it takes, for us who made it into the profession, you have to have thick skin. Sophia, you might be able to relate, but I had a tough Greek father. So I have very thick skin. And so I was able to kind of blow off those comments about, you know, or not, someone not looking at me or whatever it may be. And there's sometimes we still face that in a profession as women. There are sometimes certain examiners I might talk to, or supervisory patent examiners that I've had some issues with, and we can kind of giggle about it at home with my kids, and you know, we role play and we get a good laugh at it. But there is that part of being thick-skinned, and I wish it weren't like that. And I think part of being thick-skinned is just to say, you know, I'm going to do my best to change it, and I'm just going to let it go.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's about being thick-skinned, but also what I would hope is that since we're all a lot more interconnected now than we used to be. I mean, I don't know your college experience, Elaine, but when I was in college, I mean, we did not have Facebook and Instagram and this and that and the other. I mean, we barely had email at that time. My God, I'm dating myself. But you know, the thing is, we can all be interconnected. And so I would hope that the people that are in college and are potentially, you know, doubting themselves or struggling, reach out to people like us, you know, talk to us. We'll tell you that we've heard it all. You just have to stick to your guns. You cannot let people make you doubt yourself, because that's going to happen all the time. All the time.
It will never end. Exactly. And there's so many online platforms, even if you don't know someone specifically, or if you're like, I just can't reach out to Shruti Costales. She doesn't know me. I feel there are so many online platforms where you can ask these questions, and there are dedicated professionals, right, in the such as yourselves, that are answering them and giving some guidance. There's a wealth of information that they can access just via these platforms to at least get an idea, or connects with someone so you can have a deeper conversation.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So we're coming up on 1 o'clock. I want to respect our time, but I do want to end with one last question. What is one action step? We're all about action here, that patent professionals can take today to improve diversity for the patent bar.
Do you want me to go?
I'll let you kick that off, because just one is, let me.
One today, Sophia, that they could do today.
So I would advise that I can make this pledge, and you know, I ask all of you to make this pledge, is that reach out to your friends, family members, and tell them about the profession. I was the first in my, you know, big, huge sort of Indian friend circle who went to law school. Once I went to law school, I swear like half the Indian community who was friends with my parents somehow ended up in law school. I'm like, what's going on? Is everyone copying me? But that's great, you know, because people become what they can see, right? And so if you share that there's this opportunity to become a patent agent, patent lawyer, have this career, you're going to get more interest.
And from a more professional kind of standpoint, that's how you can do it in your personal community, is go back to your firm, go back to your legal department and say, how are we engaging? Is it meaningful? What information are we providing to law school students, to college students? And is there a way that we can be part of the discussion and help give information about what it takes to get into this profession and what you need to do, and take away a little bit of that confusion? Because that's the number one thing I hear. Reach out and see what you're doing and how you can do it better.
So I see one more question. I know I said that was our last question, but I just want to end with this. Do you, in your opinion, what is more important? Diversity metrics at a patent boutique, like the boxes, or the level of effort of change to change the diversity needle in the patent bar?
I think it would be the latter in this specific situation, but it's difficult to say. One thing when the topic of inclusion started to really bubble up in the last few years, I would say, of course, it's easy to be inclusive if you don't have a diverse work group. Like if everyone's the same, it's much easier to build an inclusive working environment. I think the focus needs to be away from numbers, or in what we've talked about, Elaine, what Harrity is doing, seeing there's a problem with the numbers. We need to take a look at it. We need to look at it from different views and also see how we can be more inclusive in bringing people into the discussion or giving them information on how they can be successful in this practice area, but also at Harrity.
Shruti, do you have any comments, or you're just, second?
I was just going to say, I think both are important. You know, you have to measure, you have to check the boxes, but you also have to look at the story behind it, right?
Yeah. You can't stop at the boxes, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you both so much. Great information. It's very enjoyable. If anyone has other questions, please let us know. I can reach out to Sophia or Shruti and ask them. Thank you guys for your time, and join us, I guess, in our next one, probably in a few months, in next quarter.
Thank you.
Everybody has
Thank
a
you,
great
Shruti. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
I'll send an email with the recording of this webinar, as well as Sophia, Elaine's, and Shruti's contact information for anybody with questions, or if you want to share this webinar with your colleagues. Also send a link where you'll be able to find any upcoming webinars, or Elaine's diversity vlog as well, which does put out weekly actionable tips, which I think some of you guys were looking for.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.